Welcome back to the Route 281 podcast, your weekly look into the lives of the people that make Somerset County, Pennsylvania such a special place to be. If you haven't already, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Spotify. I greatly appreciate it, and it helps the show. Today's guest is someone who brings incredible talent and passion to the culinary world. Scott Schmucker is a certified executive chef, a certified culinary educator, and was recently inducted into the American Academy of Chefs. He's not only making an impact in the kitchen, but also in the classroom, shaping the next generation of chefs at Westmoreland County Community College. We're lucky to have him right here in Somerset County. Please welcome Scott Schmucker. Hey, let's be honest. Summer is right around the corner, and it's not too soon to start planning that summer vacation. So contact Lindsay at Quiet Waters Travel. Message her on Facebook, or check out her website, or email her. I'll put the link in the description. But Lindsay's an expert. She'll help you plan your trip and make it as smooth as possible. Whether you want a hotel on the beach, an all-inclusive resort to Mexico, or a cruise to the Bahamas, contact Lindsay at Quiet Waters Travel. Okay, yeah, we should be good. So, your family owned the Pine Grill, or still does, or?
No, my family owned Emerald Park Restaurant, which it borders Flight 93.
Oh.
And now it's called, Shorty's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so my grandpa built that, I think, back in like 1924.
Oh, nice.
And moved from Ligonier area, Latrobe, and moved there and built that in the 1920s. And then he owned it his whole life, and then my dad took it over after he got out of World War II and Korean War, and then he owned it his whole life, and then I actually took it over for a few years after college.
Oh, wow.
And ran that, and then I just decided that I didn't want to be born and raised in Stoystown, PA, and work my whole life there. I wanted to go see the world, so I went back to culinary school and got another degree, and then kind of moved around.
What was your first degree in?
First was in hotel restaurant management, a bachelor's degree.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I went, after 4 years of running Emerald Park, that's when I decided to, not, just kind of, we decided to sell it, and I went and got another culinary degree in Pittsburgh at the Pennsylvania Culinary Institute, and got a culinary degree.
Okay.
And for the 2 years that I went to school there, I worked at La Forêt. It was like a 5-star French restaurant.
Yeah. So
I worked there while I went to culinary school, and then come home on the weekends.
What was the name of it?
La Forêt.
Okay.
So it was like named the #1 French restaurant in Western PA. Like the 2 years I was there, but they're not open anymore. It was a small place, but very intense.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I'll just it's Schmucker, right?
Yes.
That's the last name. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm not
Scott
sure
Schmucker.
Scott Schmucker, episode 38. He is he's a chef, professionally trained chef with some. We'll get into what you did in Vegas. You can tell us a little bit, but you were raised here. You grew up in Somerset County.
Yes.
In Stoystown.
Yep.
Went to school where?
Went to Shade.
Went to Shade?
Shade, yep. Played football, basketball, baseball. Had fun. If I went to a big school, I would have never started in any of them, but luckily it was small enough everyone had to play.
Yeah, right. They're always recruiting, you got to play this. But it seems like enrollment's down. We've talked about that before. But Somerset County was home, and then you decided to travel a little bit.
Yeah. So
where did you get your degree? Your undergrad?
Undergrad was in Indiana University, Pennsylvania, IUP.
Okay.
So I got my bachelor's degree there.
And so was it growing up with a family restaurant that made you want to go into that field?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I just really admired my dad and everything he did. And I remember when I told him I didn't want to take over the business because I wanted to travel a little bit and see other things and come back. And he's like, well, you're probably smart because it's a rough life, which I didn't get out of the business anyway, so I have the same career the whole life.
Yeah. Well, you got firsthand view of what it takes to own and run a restaurant.
Oh, correct. Yeah, it was it was a lot. I know, I have a brother a year older. I have 5 brothers and sisters, but my 1 year older brother, he and I every morning, the bus would come at 6:50 in the morning, but before that we had to get up and go over. Well, we had horses and we had to feed the horses and feed the dogs and water them, and then we had to stock all the beer coolers. Dad called it police the front, which was pick up all the garbage in front of the restaurant, and we had to we'd have to clean the men's and women's restrooms, and we had to burn all the garbage out there, and just everything. It was like crazy, and then go over and get ready for school.
Yeah.
So
wow. Well, that's good. I mean, that's good for kids, I think.
Yeah.
Like it builds character. You're learning something, and
oh yeah, there was
the time you probably this is just chores.
Yep, I couldn't tell you how many times we'd be wanting, like I've already had friends coming over and a girlfriend, and we're all going out on a Friday or Saturday night when I was in high school, and Dad would call over. We had an intercom from the restaurant to the house, and he'd be like, Scott, we need you to come over and do dishes tonight. And I'm like, well, I can't. I'm like, my buddies are all coming, they're gonna be here soon, we have plans, I told you. And he's like, I don't care, you're doing dishes, we're packed, and we don't have anyone, we need help. I'm like, he's like, tell your friends they can sit in the restaurant and we'll give them free pizza. I'm like, well, that's great for them, but I'm going to be working all night. And and he didn't care. I went over and did dishes all night. So it did give you a good perspective on what it takes to work hard.
Well, it always seems, I've worked in some different industries, but I've never worked in that industry.
Yeah.
And I always, my family were farmers. And I think that if there's an industry that's as demanding as farming, it's the restaurant industry, because you are working when everyone else is enjoying their time.
Right.
And it's nonstop, really.
Right.
I mean,
it's 7 days a week.
Yeah.
That's what I always tell
Holidays,
students.
if you're...
I said, I said I could write a book on the benefits of being a chef and owning a restaurant and stuff like that, but I could write a whole nother book on why you don't want to do it.
Yeah.
I said, like, when your busiest times are gonna be weekends, evenings, and holidays, when everybody else is having parties and bonfires and going to the lake and going to the beach and doing everything else and having a blast. It's or going out for New Year's Eve. It's our job to make sure they have a blast. So you're not going to enjoy any of those weekends. And to this day, I still get, I still have issues with weekends, evenings, and holidays. Like, even with my wife, who's known it my whole life, it's going to be that way. But it's like, what are we doing, on on Easter weekend? What are we doing? Yeah. Well, you know what I'm doing? I'm cooking. She's like, well, we got family coming in, and Caitlin wants to go out, and whatever it is. It's like, so you can't.
That's the challenge.
Yeah. So it's never ending.
But there has to, so despite the demands, challenges that it takes to do something like that on a day-to-day basis, there has to be a plus side. For the reason that, so like you and so many other people that run these restaurants and cook for so many people and do what you do. So what's the most rewarding parts?
Well, the most rewarding part is, like, I'll tell students on the good side, number one, when you're working in a restaurant, time flies. I mean, because you're so busy. Like, if you're ever just standing around with nothing to do, which you almost never are. Something's wrong, like, because there's normally, like in the restaurant business, we're almost always multitasking. We're putting something in the oven and putting a timer on, and we're whatever, starting us 5 gallons of soup and having that come into a simmer, and then prepping something else at the same time, and so you have like multiple things going on, and it, while orders are coming in, and you're trying to make that stuff, so it's like run. So I mean. And in the restaurant business, like, at least in my career, like, we never work an 8-hour shift. It's always like, start at 7 in the morning and then you're done at like 9 or 10 at night. It's usually like 12, 14-hour days. And, and it could be 7 days a week unless you just, force yourself a day off.
Yeah. Well, that's where, if you're managing or leading, it's important to be a good leader and scheduler. People don't get burned out.
Right.
You don't burn yourself out, too, at the same time.
Yeah. Like, and then so I said, like, I'll regularly work, 12, 14-hour days and never sit down once. Like, you're just like, run, Yeah. People are like, well, never trust a skinny chef. And I'm like, well, I've never worked with a fat chef. Because they're always, you're always running. Like, you're just go. And, you're not sitting down eating a big meal or watching TV.
Yeah.
You're not sitting at a computer all day on your butt, working from home or something. It's like, so, I mean, that's one of the good things, that time flies.
Yeah.
I know people have left the industry and went to do other things, and they're just like, oh, my God, it seems like 1 hour is like 8 hours in the restaurant, when we're even a waitress or something.
Yeah.
But, and the other good thing is, I mean, you can get rich if you're, do it right.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to be a line cook your whole life, you're not going to get rich, that's for sure. But if, you want to own a restaurant or, anything, any kind
you're
of
going to work hard
catering business. Yeah. You're going to work hard to be an executive chef of a, big organization, big place. You can make a lot of money. And the other good thing is, if you're good at what you do, people can, you can have someone telling you, they loved your work 100 times a day if you want. Say, oh my God, that was the best soup I ever had, or that was the best, meal I ever ate. And, and it's a little bit of an ego. Like, a lot of people don't ever have any of that in their career.
Right.
Where someone's saying, man, I loved what you did.
Yeah.
So
it's not a thankless job.
Right.
A lot of people will tell, say compliments to the chef.
Yeah.
You hear that.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the plus side.
Yeah. So, and it's got, like I said, it's a fun career. It's like, and you got to have a passion for cooking. And I just love making good food. Like, it's fun. Like, what I don't like is if I have to make the same thing over and over and over. Like, that's line work in a restaurant. Like if you're, you're on working grill and you're, cooking all the steaks and the grilled seafood and everything else. It's like, it's fun for a little bit, but if it doesn't change after 3 months and you're still working those same steaks and chicken every night of your life, and all of a sudden 3 months turns into 3 years, and it's burnout because you're there for hours and hours and hours, and over a hot grill. And
do you find people that want to get involved? They're like, oh, I like to cook at home. I want to try this, and I'll come and work for you, or I'd like to try cooking, or you put them on a line, and then all of a sudden, like, this is not what I thought. Does that happen?
All the time, and more so than people just saying, I'll come work for you, I want to try this. It's more people that, even want to go to culinary school because they want to be a chef. They're watching the Food Network and they're like, oh, I want to do that. Well, then they get into the industry, into the culinary school, and they're still, kind of good, and they do really well. And then they get out in the industry working, and they're like, no, this isn't like the Food Network. I'm in this hot, greasy kitchen.
Oh, you mean I got to do my own dishes and prep work and this and that? They don't have somebody to...
working.
That's like HGTV. Everybody says, and I go into do some remodeling or something like that. Like, oh, this doesn't happen in 30 minutes episode, No, it doesn't happen in 30-minute episode. Yeah,
that's what I always say about that. I said, they're not showing you the 15 men that come in during the commercial, like when, you always just see Chip and Diane tearing down the wall and repainting everything, and I'm like, I don't think it works that way. I think
it's funny is my kids love watching Food Network.
Oh, do they?
We watch they like Guy Fieri, Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives.
Nice.
And then we were recently on a cruise, and like you don't get too many TV channels. So at night when we're all done and they want to just put something on the TV that just for mindless television, the Food Network, it was like one of the channels we could get. They was like, Daddy, can you put Guy on? I'm like, we'll see if it's on, So I'd put it on, and if it wasn't that, it was Beat Bobby Flay.
Oh, nice.
And they would watch that. They're like, oh, what's he cooking? And they're interested. But, well, they watch their mother cook, and they help, and we try to teach them. It's important for kids to learn how to make something, and I don't know.
Yeah, I had Food Network contact me once and interviewed me for a job on the Food Network, and
really,
for like to get on the Food Network, and it was like they did like email interview, send them resumes, and I didn't call them; they called me, and they just said they'd heard it, that I'd have a good personality for it. And this was a long time ago. And then they sent I had to send videos and pictures of food I cooked, and they sent someone out to video me for a while and interview me, and from LA and and stuff, and it went on a couple months, and then they kept saying they weren't sure, the main producers were debating whether I was the right person, whether they if I had.
Do you know what kind of show it would have been?
They would never tell me.
Okay.
And then finally they had called me and said they decided on someone else. And I said, the lady who kept contacting me from LA, and I said, let me ask you. I said, I'll bet you if, I said, I was very prim and proper every time they came. I said, I bet you if I was like, I like to hunt. If I was wearing all camo culinary gear, instead of chef coats and stuff, or if I was, 400 pounds, or if I had spiked orange hair, they would, they probably would have liked me more. And she's like, kind of hesitated, and then she's like, Chef Schmucker, you are exactly right. She said they just thought you were too clean-cut all-American. They needed someone with more pizzazz and everything else.
Isn't that something?
Like a year, months later, or maybe a year later, she calls and said, well, that show's airing tonight that we were calling you about. And I said, just out of courtesy, and I said, what is it? And Guys, Games, and Groceries or whatever.
Oh, really?
I said, there you go, the spiked orange hair and the, the big flare and stuff.
Well, I guess that makes good TV.
Yes, that's what she said.
It's
not how good you can cook that they're looking for. They're looking for someone that people say, "Wow, did you see that crazy guy on the channel?"
That's what this podcast is never controversial.
Yeah.
So I'm like, people that want to listen to this, they want to listen to it.
Right.
But I'm not like that either.
Right.
I guess everybody has their own style, but.
But it's amazing how the Food Network is, and I bet you there's no way I have a statistic for it, but I would bet in my 30 years of teaching culinary schools, 3 different colleges, I'll bet you that at least 50% of the people that I had as students are not in the career anymore, because I think a lot of them just watch the Food Network and think this is what I want to do, and I like to cook at home, and then they get an education and they start working in a restaurant, and they're like, oh my God, this is weekends, evenings, holidays, 14-hour days, hot, greasy, thankless. People in computer science majors are making 4 times what I make, and they just like.
Yeah, you have to love it.
Yeah,
it's a lifestyle, really.
Yeah,
is it? I mean,
it's very tough to raise a family and be a chef.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the hard part.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you're not home. Yeah. So I remember taking my oldest daughter to college, and, I was taking her, and she was going in for, like a physician's assistant, and I'm like driving her to college, and I got emotional, and she's like, Dad, I'm the one supposed to be like upset. And I said, I'm just so mad at myself. And she's like, why? I said, you went from like age 8 to 18 and I missed the whole thing.
Yeah.
I said, I was just always working. I said, if you wanted to see me, you had to come sit in a table at the restaurant, you and your sisters, and, I'd come out to the table and talk to you. I said, I was never home. I said, you played 3 sports in high school. And I said, I probably missed 90% of your games because I could never come.
Yeah.
So it was like, that was when I sold the Pine Grill. I sold my half out, you know.
No, that's the reality of, But you appreciated and respected your dad, and he worked in that industry.
Oh, absolutely.
So.
Yeah. I was more mad at myself than she was at me. So.
Yeah, right. We tend to be harder on ourselves, I guess. Yeah. So take us through that little bit of time where you went from your family business to traveling the world a little bit and learning, what did that do for your culinary career?
Well, it did a lot. I mean, so I went, when I went to culinary school, I didn't want to just keep working at Emerald Park back in Stoystown, which is right, like I said, beside Flight 93. So I wanted to work somewhere that I learned while I'm educating, so I had to really beg to get into cooking at the La Ferre restaurant. I would go almost once a week after school, and I would drive over to it. It's like a house but it was like a fine dining restaurant, and I would just go knock on the door at like 2-3 in the afternoon, and the chef owner would answer the door, and I would be like, I just wondering if you need anyone to cook. He's like, no, we don't. He's like, we don't need anyone. We've got a full staff, and so a week later I'd knock again. I remember about the 5th or 6th time I was like knocked, and he opens the door, and he's like, you again? He's there.
Persistence pays off.
Yeah, I said, I just want to. I said, I remember telling him before, I work for free. I just want to.
Yeah.
I want to learn high end, like what you're doing. I said, I realized when I went to culinary school that I don't know a lot about cooking. I know how to run a bar and restaurant. So he was like, all right, do you got a chef coat in your car? I said, yeah. He's like, all right, come on in, you can start right now. I was like, wow. Oh, okay. And he's like, well, I'm not going to pay you.
Yeah.
He said, you said you'll work for free.
Wow.
So for about, I think it was like a week or two, he left me work for free.
Now, was this a place where, like, culinary students went to learn from him? Was he like, no?
Not at the time, no. He didn't take
any culinary students. You just knew that it was something you wanted to learn.
He had his team of 4 cooks.
Yeah.
Him and his wife and their 3 or 4 cooks.
Wow.
And they were open Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and they had 2 seatings each day, and they were sold out like 3-4 months ahead, reservations. So it was packed, and it was like real high end. But I mean, I learned so much from them. It was crazy, like way more. I mean, you can't learn like that at school, because you got to just do the basics in a culinary school and a little bit of the high end. But there, it's like working super high end every day, doing techniques that I'd never even imagined, and working things, and like cleaning foie gras yourself, and working with black and white truffles, and just on and on, like all these amazing foods and how to do things. And I remember having, like, after I was working there for a couple months, and I had a seafood practical at the culinary school that I was a student at, and I think I was like 25 at the time. And that's like, they'll give you a bunch of products, and you have to, like a mystery basket, you have to come up with something and make it. And I made this seafood dish, and the instructor like was looking at it and grading me, and then he left and went and got the director of the culinary program at the time. This is way back in the mid 80s, and he comes in, and they're talking and looking at it. I said, am I in trouble? Like, is there, like, did I do something wrong? And they're like, no, we're just wondering, like, where did you learn how to do this? Like, we don't even know how you made this. Like, this is above us. Like, and I said, I make it where I work. And they're like, where? I said, La Forêt. They're like, you work at La Forêt? Yeah. Really? Like, when did you, like, nobody works there. Like, we can't even get a student in there. Wow. And I said, oh, yeah, well, I've been working there for a couple months. And for
free. But it's an education that you didn't have to pay for. You worked for it.
Yeah. So it was interesting. And then I went from there, when I was getting ready to graduate, I wanted to work somewhere really good. So that's when I started researching and found out that the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Atlanta, like Buckhead, Georgia, that was their headquarters, and it was rated at the time the number 1 5-star 5-diamond hotel in the U.S. and number 3 in the world. And they had all like French and Austrian and Italian chefs, and this one, Henri Boubet, was stationed there, but that was the headquarters, so he was the corporate executive chef in charge of all of the Ritzes. And at the time, there were only 4 or 5 Ritz-Carltons. And so I started doing the same thing. I started sending resumes and calling there every week trying to get a job. I went to our career services people, and they said, oh, you can't get a job there. They don't hire any of our students. They're just trying to keep it all with European chefs and stuff. So I called, and one day I did get the executive chef on the phone, this Henri Boubet, and he said, he couldn't speak real good English, but he's like, I said, I've sent a lot of resumes. He's like, oh, I said, if I could just have a 5-minute interview. And he said, well, I can't, he said, I'm leaving tomorrow morning for France. And he said, so I'm not going to be here. I can't, and I know he's just, he might have been telling the truth, but I figured he's just trying to dodge me, And I said, well, he said, if I leave, it was 7 a.m, I remember, and I said, if I leave right now, if I jump in the car and drive there right now, I can be there by 7 o'clock tonight, like in 12 hours. And he kind of got quiet on the phone. He's like, if you jump in your car right now you can be here in 12 hours and you want a 5-minute interview. And I said, yeah. Like I said, just so I can have a talk. And he's like, boom, I wait here till 7 tonight and then I'm going home. And he hung up on me. I was like, I think I got an interview. So I did. I jumped in the car. I didn't look good, and I had a rusted Volkswagen Rabbit, and jumped in my car and drove 12 straight hours and got there. And I realized what a Ritz is all about as soon as I pulled up. There were like nothing but Jaguars and Lamborghinis and, you know, all kind of amazing cars pulling up.
Yeah. You hand yours to the valet, and you're like...
real big people, you know, all these guys in top hats and come to the cars. And they, you know, this guy in a big top hat and black suit, and he comes running over to my car, and he's like, welcome to the Ritz-Carlton, sir. How may we help you? And I'm like, I said, oh, no. I said, I don't know where to park. I said, I have an interview. I have to be there by 7. You know, I just drove 12 hours, and I have an interview with Chef Boubet, but I said, I'm so nervous. I don't know where to go, where to park. And he's there, that's okay. You're at the Ritz. We'll take care of you. And I'm like, he's like yelling to somebody else and waving him over, says, grab, you know, take his car, put it in there. And like I said, well, I don't have a lot of money for it. And he's like, that's okay. You don't need money. We won't take tips. He's there. He's there. When you come back, he's there. We'll have your car waiting for you right here. Yeah. And they, you know, he yelled for another guy. He's there. Take him straight up to the chef. He's there. Get him upstairs. And, you know, another guy. And here's like actors and stuff like that getting out of fancy cars in front of me, and they were paying just as much attention to me as anyone else. Yeah. You know, it was like crazy. And that's the, you know, that's the MO there. I mean, doesn't matter who you are, you're going to be treated like royalty. And when they took me up to the chef Boubet, he and I went in his office, and I sat down. He's like an old, you know, short, stocky Frenchman, and, you know, and he sat there, and he's like, it was a 3-question interview. His first was, what's your name? Mm-hmm. And I told him. He said, and where do you come from? And he had a big map of the U.S. behind him, I think, because he's from France or whatever. And I kind of like pointed, you know, stood up and pointed to where I came from, like the Pittsburgh area. He's like, huh. He's like, and why do you send me all these resumes and keep calling? He's there, why do you want to work for the Ritz-Carlton so bad? He's there, what's going on? You know, I said, you know, he said, do you want to be do you have some sort of game plan? Like, I said, I only have one goal, really. I said, at this point, I said, I want to get a job here so that 1 year from now, Henri Boubet will be saying that Scott Schmucker is the hardest working employee I've ever hired. I said, and the rest will take care of itself in my career if that happens. Yeah. And I said, and I guarantee you that'll happen. Yeah. And he's like kind of sat there, and he just sat back. He's like, boom, that's a good answer. You start in 2 weeks. And he walked past me, picked up his top hat, and walked out the door. And I didn't say anything else. And I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, well, I think I just got hired.
So you got to find a place to live now.
Yeah. Well, then this other, you know, taller French chef comes walking in. He's like, Monsieur, can I help you? He's there. I said, Chef Boubet told me he just left and didn't say, you know, he's like, oh, he's like that. He's a very temperamental. He's there, you know. And I said, well, he said I start in 2 weeks, but he didn't tell me what to do. And he's like, he kind of stood back. He's like, he hired you? Yeah. He's like, really? He's like, that's unlike him. He said, yeah, you must have blown him away. I'm like, wasn't too many questions. Yeah, right. It was less than a 5-minute interview.
Wow. And that's awesome.
Yeah. So then I went, and they treated me great, and they let me stay in the hotel overnight and got me set me up with where to find rooms. And I had to go back and tell the school that I was going to have to leave before I graduated, because I didn't graduate for another 5 or 6 weeks. Okay. You know, school. But I wasn't arguing with them and saying, you know, after he said you start in 2 weeks, I'm like, I'm not going to.
Yeah, you're not going to. Yeah. After all you went through.
Yeah.
So where do you think that level of determination comes from? Because you did it with the Pittsburgh restaurant.
Yes, I did the same thing.
And then you did the same thing here.
Yeah. It was just like I kind of
had no idea what he's going to pay you.
Yeah, just like I'm big on setting goals, and then I just like try and achieve them. Like I research it and try and figure out how to achieve it, and I work at it, and you know.
Well, what was it that drew you to French restaurants?
Well, because I always I've always heard about, and I always figured that those are like the best,
the finest
dining, and the fine French cuisine, and blah blah blah, and everything
escargot.
We teach in culinary school, and all the verbiage, all the language of the culinary world is all French language. It's like in the kitchens you're using all French terms, and it's like just figured it was a French restaurant would be the finest dining, and you
wanted to go to the best and work for the best.
Yeah. So I worked there, and I worked there for a while, and then I got transferred, a promotion, transferred to another hotel, and worked a couple different Ritz-Carltons and helped open a few, like just going short stints, and was out in Aspen and lots of different places down in New Orleans at the Ritz, Amelia Island in Georgia, So, traveled around a lot of different Ritz-Carltons. And downtown Atlanta, which was 2 Ritz-Carltons in Atlanta, so I was in downtown Atlanta.
And how did you like moving from Somerset County to Atlanta?
It was quite a difference.
Yeah, I'd say.
Yeah, from Somerset County to a massive city, with a massive transit system. And, I liked it.
Yeah.
But I wanted to come home. But I said, even before I left, I told all my friends, like, I just want to go see something else. Yeah. I said, but I want to live my life in Somerset County, because I love it. I said,
did you travel as a kid?
Mm-hmm. A little bit, not a lot. I mean, we went on vacations and stuff like that, but we didn't travel a lot.
Do you remember being like, oh, I want to see more of this when you were younger?
Oh yeah.
So you had that little bit of drive to go and
see other things. Yeah.
We try to do that with our kids to get them out there to see. There's more. This is a great place to live.
Yeah,
it's a great place to raise a family. And there's 4 seasons here. It's a beautiful area, but there is more, and it's important to know that. So that if you want to explore, we try to expose them to some things.
Yeah. And then when I came back and I quit the Ritz-Carlton, and I came home. And then I got a job as a corporate chef in Pittsburgh for 4 years, but I didn't really like it because it was good pay and the hours were better than I was used to, which was crazy hours. I mean, at the Ritz, I was working 12 to 16-hour days and 6 days or 7 days a week. Every 3 weeks, I would take a day off.
Wow.
So, and work endless hours. And it was crazy how busy it was, and working as an executive chef for them. But then when I came home, I got that corporate job, but it wasn't, it was much better hours, but I just didn't like it because it wasn't fine dining.
Yeah.
It was overseeing all kinds of dining all over the southwest PA.
Yeah.
But so I left. I worked that 4 years, and that's when I went in with Mark Miller and bought the Pine Grill, and moved back to Somerset County, and did that for several years, like I said, until my daughter went to college. And then Mark was a great partner. Business was great. I just needed to, because I started teaching at the same time back at Pennsylvania Culinary, Le Cordon Bleu, where I went to school. They asked if I could teach some, so I started teaching there as well as owning the Pine Grill, and that even made it tougher to get any time off.
Yeah.
So that's when, I just kind of sold my half to Mark Miller, and, so then it was, so now he still owns the Pine Grill, and I sold my half out. I don't even know what year that was, 2002 or something like that. And then in the meantime, I was still teaching at the culinary school and doing that. Well, then I started, I got a job cooking for some of the Steelers while I was there. And actually that was before I even sold my half out, because I was cooking for the Steelers, owner of half owner of Pine Grill, and working there, and teaching at the culinary school in Pittsburgh.
Oh, you're busy.
Yeah, so it was crazy.
So what? Tell me a little bit about cooking for you cooked for Steelers owner?
No, I would cook for players. They called me one day because I actually, a few years before that, I got a call from the organizer for the Olympics that was going to be in Atlanta, the World Olympics, and they asked if I would help run the food service, all the food for the Olympics.
Is this for the athletes?
No, I thought they meant that, but they didn't. They meant the public.
Oh.
And I'm like, I don't know, like, what does it entail? They're like, well, that's what you've got to sit down and figure out. But it's going to be feeding probably.
We were hoping you would know.
Yeah. They said it's going to be feeding like over 2 million people a day.
Oh, my.
And I'm like, what the heck? So, and they had people that had numbers for me, that were working on it as well. So it wasn't like I just had to figure everything out. I kind of just had to go and, get it going. But, yeah, so I did that. And I said, well, why me? They're like, well, they said, it's you know the city of Atlanta inside and out because you were there for years as a chef, and high dining, fine dining, and high volume. I said, yeah, well, I've never done anything that big, 2 million some people a day. And they said, well, neither is any other chef in this country. Mm-hmm. So, and they said, you're not tied to the city yet. So any of the other chefs that are here, it's going to be their busiest month of their life. And so they can't help us. Yeah. So you were here for years, and now you're not here. So if we can get you back,
So is it just for like all the venues, like where the?
So it was for all of the food service in all the the Olympic Park and the World Congress Center and
so
all the places.
People from all over the world,
right?
And you have to
have food so that when people would come in, let's say you wanted to go to the Dream Team basketball game or the wrestling or anything that was inside Olympic Plaza, what I think it was called the Olympic Plaza or something they called it. So it was a huge area where the World Congress Center, the Dome Stadium, TNT building, Ted Turner's building, and a massive park in between all of those, like kind of a nice grassy big park. Those were all encased with a 12-foot chain link fence and barbed wire and high security. So you had to check in at one area. Mm-hmm. But once you're in there, you had your ticket, which cost a lot of money to get in, and you got scanned and everything else to make sure it was safe. You got in, well, then you couldn't leave, because once you left, you couldn't come back in. But all those games were going on within there. Mm-hmm. So we had to figure out, well, those people might be in there for, 16 hours. We got to feed them. Yeah. Food, drinks, everything else, and they're all over the world, so it's got to be a wide variety of foods for options. Yeah. So that's who we were feeding.
Wow.
I remember the one floor at the World Congress Center, between the stadium and the World Congress Center, is this massive parking garage. And one floor they built me all walk-in freezers for the Olympics. Another floor was all walk-in coolers. Another floor, from floor to ceiling, end to end, for the whole parking garage floor was Budweiser, cases of Budweiser. Another whole floor was like cases of Pepsi. Or Coke. It was Atlanta. Oh, God, they kill me for that. It was Coca-Cola. Yeah. They hate Pepsi down there because Coke is made in Atlanta. But yeah, so it was interesting. I saw so many people there. I remember talking to O.J. Simpson, and I had like the highest clearance because I had to have every venue fed, so I could just walk right into like the Dream Team. I remember one time was playing, and I just wanted to see them. Some Michael Jordan and Shaq and all them, and so I just walked in the front gate, and they just let me go right by this long line of people. They're like, "Oh yeah, you just go ahead." And then I walked into the arena, and then where you start walking down the steps to the basketball game. And they're like, "We need your ticket," and I just showed them my badge around my neck, and they're like, "Oh, go ahead." And I walked down, and I walked right down to the floor and stood beside the bench with the players and watched for 10, 15 minutes. I was so busy, but I just wanted to see, and I sat there watching them, and then my wife and I actually that same evening, because I was talking to some of the players sitting there, and they told me where they were going, and my wife and I went out at 2 a.m. and had a beer with some of them.
Awesome.
Yeah, Shaq was the really nice guy. He came over and sat with me. He grabbed a little basketball off of the counter of the bar at 2:30 in the morning and signed it for me, and
that's awesome.
Gave it to me, and so it was interesting. Yeah.
Oh, I bet. That's incredible. What an experience.
Yeah, that was crazy. It was that. Yeah. So and it was a massive crowd, but
I can't even begin to imagine how to feed that many people.
I know.
I think on the cruise ship, it's a lot of people. How in the world do they feed all those people all week long?
Oh yeah.
But
yeah, that was and then when when I got home, they did an article. It was in USA Today about me cooking for that many people, and they just asked all kind of questions and stuff. Well, the Steelers, administration, they read that, and they thought that they thought I cooked for the athletes there. So that's when I got a call saying we have some players that need a personal chef. We want them to have a personal chef because they have to watch their weight, and they don't have a wife there, and they're just, eating terrible. And would you be interested? And I'd like I said, going to their house and cooking, and they're like, yeah. And I'm like who? And they said, well, specifically first, like Levon Kirkland. He was like the all-pro middle linebacker, and I'm a huge Steeler fan. I was like, yeah, I'll do it. And I didn't tell them I didn't cook for the athletes there. I was just schlucking food for $2 million a day. Right. But that's how I started, and I started cooking for him. And then it ended up just I capped it at 5 players, but I was just constantly getting calls from guys saying, hey, you're the chef that cooks for Kirkland and Joel Steed and all them. And I'm like, yeah, like, can you cook for me? I'm like, no, like, I can't do any more. Like, I don't have time. Like,
how do you even do that? I always wonder, like, so if you're a personal chef for that many people, how do you, like, they all eat at different times, or they get together, or?
I would usually go and prep them dinner, but I would prep it at home in the morning, or at the restaurant, and then I would go to their houses one at a time, and I would buy the products and get some little bit of prep done. Then I'd go to their house and finish prepping it, cook it. If they were there, they'd eat it then, and if not, I'd leave a note what it was and how to reheat it and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And I kind of gauged what their diet was, what they wanted, and most of them every guy I cooked for was so nice. Like they were just like awesome. Like me and you sitting here talking. Yeah. I remember Kirkland would come in. He was like a massive guy. He'd come in and he'd jump up on the table beside me, and I'm sitting there cooking, and he'd BS with me. Well, actually, before he'd come in, he'd first walked in from practice or whatever. Every day he would sit down in the room beside me on the couch and read the Bible for like 20 minutes or so. And then he'd come in and talk to me for a while and BS, and and it was interesting. Then I'd leave his house and go to the next guy. I remember one time cooking for, I think it was Casey Hampton, or maybe it was Joel Steed. I forget which one of them.
One, they eat a lot.
No, they're both big, and it's like I just come walking up, and I was running behind, and I'm leaving, and he's walking down the sidewalk towards me, and I see him. He's got 2 massive satchels of McDonald's food, and I'm like standing there looking like this, and when he gets close to me, he just kind of hangs his head. And he's like, oh, he's like, I said, that's bad food. He's like, I know. He's there. I said, well, I cooked you a bunch of food. He's like, I'll eat that too.
Don't worry, I'll eat that too. Yeah.
I said, well, aren't you supposed
to be watching? This is my appetizer.
I said, aren't you supposed to be watching your weight? He's like, do I look like I care what I weigh?
That's funny. Did they ever say, Scott, man, you're not making enough for me, or and you're like, I'm supposed to do this.
Well, they never complained about the amounts I made them, because I made them pretty good portions, but it was always trying to be high protein, low carb, stuff like that. But they wanted me to cook for them more often than I did. Yeah. Like I had a couple times, like guys' agents would call me and be like, come on, man, like just quit the culinary school and stuff, and you can, we'll pay you way more than you can make there. I said, yeah, but then next year he gets traded or cut, and then I'm out of a job. It's like, so I just didn't really want to do that.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's good foresight.
All kind of funny stories. I went cooking for them, and I got locked out of Levon Kirkland's house one time, and I left my keys in there, and my keys and my keys to my car and the keys to his house and everything else. And I tried getting back in with the key code, and it set off the alarms, and cops all showed up, and they honestly thought I was trying to rob the place. And they said, what are you doing? I kept saying, no, my keys are in there. I can't get in, and I don't have the keys in my car sitting there. Yeah. And they weren't buying it, 'cause,
seriously, call Levon.
Yeah. That's what I ended up having to do. Like I said, because they were like, there was 2 cop cars and a couple cops, and they were like, I don't know if we have no way of, because my car was locked, so I didn't have any ID. And I'm like, I said, well, I said, I have a cell phone. Like, if I can call down to the stadium and get Levon Kirkland, at the practice field, and get him on a phone, and they're like, you can do that. And I'm like, yeah. And I hope. So I did. Sure enough, I had him on the phone. I had him on speakerphone. He's like laughing. He's your chef. How did you lock yourself? I said my stuff's in there. I said, honestly, like, there's no time to clown around. I said, no, what's the entrance code? And he's like, can I trust you? I said, stop it. I said, I come here every day. I'm like, so he's laughing.
Well, he gave me funny people like, I don't know this guy.
I know.
Before you know it, you're in cuffs.
yeah. And then after he gave me the code and I got my stuff and then the cops they're like asking me, like, what's he like? Like, what's he do at home? Like, I said, this is where he lives, huh? I thought it would be a bigger place. And I'm like, well, this is just when he's playing for the Steelers where he lives. I said, I'm like, I got to go. I'm like, I know you want to talk, but
I got to cook for
I'm late.
Four other guys.
Yeah.
That's
so it was lots of fun times. But yeah, I went from the teaching at the Cordon Bleu, like Pennsylvania Culinary, and teaching there for like 8-9 years, and then I got a better offer at the Art Institute of Pittsburgh, and then I went there and I worked there for about 8-9 years again, and then I got a better offer at Westmoreland Community College, which is where I teach now.
Mm-hmm. By now you've figured out that this is a local podcast talking about local people, and when it comes to building materials, I buy local. That's why I go to SDC Building Center in Somerset. It's no surprise to anybody that it's getting nice outside. You get outside and you see everything that you need to do to your house to get it in shape for the spring and for summer. Whether it's new siding, roofing, or building a deck, SDC has what you need to get the job done right. That's why I shop at SDC Building Center in Somerset. See them today.
And I love it there. And, it's just a nice country setting, a beautiful campus. Everyone I work with, is Chef Komarinsky and Chef Rayson. He's one of the best pastry chefs in the country.
Wow.
And I teach students there. It's just a really nice school. So then it's half the distance. I don't have to drive to Pittsburgh. That's when I quit cooking for the Steelers.
Okay.
When I came there. So
that's awesome.
That I'm teaching. So it's been almost 30 years of teaching kids how to cook.
Yeah. So what's one thing you notice about the kids that make it, or the kids that really want to do it and stay in the industry and go on? What's the difference?
They're usually the ones who really do have a passion for cooking, and they're usually the ones who are really well grounded. Mm-hmm. Like they have a direction. Like I was in culinary school. They just had set goals, and they really are into cooking. And like any school, like it's college, you get some kids not near as bad as high school, but you'll get some kids that you're just wondering, like, what are you doing here? Like, you don't even act like you care. And instead of like being energetic and like, oh, I can't believe I'm learning how to make all this duck confit and pâtés, like I was teaching them this week. Other kids are just like so into it, and then you have some kids that are like, when are we leaving? Like,
just there.
I'm hungry. Like,
yeah.
I've got to meet someone to play Game Boy tonight, or not Game Boy anymore, but
right.
whatever they're playing. It's like,
yeah.
How some students, class doesn't start till 3 in the afternoon, and they'll walk in late and yawning and sorry, I just woke up. I'm like, what do you mean you just woke up? It's 3 in the afternoon. Well, I was playing video games till like.
They weren't working the night shift at some nice restaurant. Huh?
No, they were playing video games till like 9 in the morning.
Yeah. So the self-motivated, passionate students.
Then you have some that are just really good, and they're on top of it, and you can tell they're going to be successful if they stick with it.
Yeah.
And I had one student, he still helps out at the college, and he didn't go to culinary school till he was 65. Wow. He was a wealthy retired CEO,
wanted to learn.
Yeah, of a big business, and he just always wanted to be a chef, and his dad said you can't make a career out of that, so he went, and he was very successful, and so then he was 65, he decided he was one of the best students I've ever had. Wow. He was on top of it. He goes out and cooks on the side and does all kinds of stuff. Chef G. Greg Nemchek.
So at what point do you start calling him chef?
That's always a hot topic in the culinary world. Like,
really?
What makes you a chef? And there's no real answer to it. Like, some people, call themselves chefs and they've never cooked anywhere. They really cook at home all the time and say, I'm a chef. But to be certified as a chef, that's where I kind of qualify it. Like, do you go through the training? Do you go to, through the American Culinary Federation? And there's testing. I'm now like a proctor, so like if people want to become a certified, and there's like all these levels, certified culinarian, chef de cuisine, certified sous chef, certified executive chef, master chef, like all these levels. So I'm someone that evaluates people. So if you want to do it, you have to take written tests. It's based off how much experience you have. You have to prove all the work you've done and have all the documentation. Have you competed nationally? That goes into it. In cooking competitions. Have you, how much education do you have in culinary arts? And, all these different things. And then you have to pass rigorous written exams to become a certified chef. And it's also the cooking practicals. So I evaluate the practicals. So when people are cooking for it, I'm one of the people that judges it and says,
you taste everything.
Mm-hmm,
I was thinking about this before you came on at work yesterday. I'm like, so I think like it's an expression of art.
Oh yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, so what other expression of art do you use 3 of your senses? Your smell, your taste, and your eyes. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then to actually do the work, I mean, it's like you're working with your hands. It's really involved. I was thinking it takes a lot of like when you are passionate for it, it would probably show through your food.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's fun. Like I said, you've got to enjoy it, but you got to challenge yourself to get better. That's what I always tell students. The ones who are really driven, like don't work somewhere that you're not learning anything. Yeah. Like, don't take the easy job where it's not, that place is not busy at all and the boss doesn't care about anything. I'm just going to go there. Like go somewhere that they're really strict and it's high end and they're challenging you to learn more and make you better. And that's my opinion. That's how you really get good. It's just constantly, and like when I said like competitions, well, I've always tried, like I've competed, and that I tell students that makes you better, like because you're gonna fail. Like I've failed, I've not done as good as I wanted, and different.
A lot of times you learn more from that.
Oh yeah. I always tell them that too. You learn more in the culinary business from making a mistake than you do from doing it right. Yeah. Like every time you totally mess something up, and it's going to happen almost every day because you're doing so many things. Yeah. You mess something up, you don't do that. You don't make that mistake again. Yeah. Like it's like, oh my gosh, And but yeah, so I did that. I mean, I also. I worked for Ted Turner for a while as a private chef, did some things for him, which he ended up taking me on some hunting trips, which was really cool, Saskatchewan and out to Colorado, with his buddies mainly, not even him.
Cooking wild game?
We did, but I didn't cook it. I went to hunt.
Oh, you just went to hunt?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
And they had private chefs. Yeah. Not chefs. They were, like when we went up to Saskatchewan, it was like a retired Mountie was one of the guides and helped him cook, and a Canadian Mountie, and the other one was an Indian off the reservation, this old guy, and it was quite an experience cooking for them, and doing that kind of stuff.
I guarantee it.
Yeah. So, and I worked as a chef. I toured with U2 for a while, the rock group.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I went to a couple,
that's amazing.
Some venues and cooked for them, and just kind of I try to do a little bit of everything. See what I want to do for a career. Well, because there's so many different things you can do.
I know. That's why that's kind of why I do this podcast. I get to live vicariously through all these people who've done different things for an hour. You know what I mean? Because I don't know. I like to reinvent myself every once in a while. Yeah. I went from the golf course industry, and I do construction now, but. Love being a business owner, love working for myself. Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that probably drives a lot of restaurant owners is they really enjoy just working for themselves. Right. And
that's one of the big benefits.
Yeah, that's one of the huge benefits where you see all the other the downsides that you think of, but usually the good outweighs it. And you work for yourself, you take pride in your own work. Everything that you do goes into
And I tell students you can set your own hours if but your hours are going to be you're married to it, so you're there constantly, like morning, noon, and night. But you can. All the decisions are yours. Yeah. You can decide who you're hiring. You can decide what the menu is. You can decide who you're firing. You can. I mean, and that can be a negative too, because it comes along with
the territory.
Oh yeah, a lot of when there's complaints, you're going to handle them. And there's constantly complaints.
What's the best cut of beef, and how do you cook it?
The best cut of beef? Well, obviously prime is best, but then I mean, you can get Kobe beef or
Have you cooked that?
Yeah, I've cooked that.
I've never eaten. I've heard it's extremely marbled, isn't it?
Incredibly! It seems like there's as much fat in it as there is meat. But they're like, it's originally in Japan was where the Kobe beef came from, and they would keep them in a controlled environment, or they still do to this day. Like, and they play symphony music while they, where the cows are.
I didn't know that.
And they feed them a special beer mash and stuff that helps their, get more marbling, and they hand massage them several times a day, all the cattle. Yeah, so you get that Kobe beef, but you pay a lot for it, but it's almost too rich, it's like so fatty, but it's tender as hell, It's really good. Yeah. But we just do like a lot, like with Jeff Ladich and catering, we do sous vide, like filet mignon, let's say. And that's where we, marinate them, cryovac them, and let them marinate in that cryovac for a few days, like a day or two, and then we sous vide them for hours and hours.
What's sous vide?
Sous vide it's a French technique they came up with, and so it's like it's a circulator. So you put them in water, so it's almost like you're poaching the fillets. So you have them, but they're still in the plastic, so they never touch the water. But you put them in the water, and then the circulator sets the exact temp you want. So like if we go to like 125, that's medium rare. 35 is medium. So if we'd go to 128, 129, that'd be kind of like in between medium rare and medium.
Just keeps it incredibly
so
tender.
The temperature stays exactly the same all those hours. So let's say it was in there for 4 hours, the steaks. When we pull them out, they're exactly medium rare. And we just have to cut them out, put grill marks, and every time we do them, and I also, to college, I cook a lot of different kind of meats and seafoods, and I sous vide all that, teach the students how to do sous vide. And every time we've ever done a cut of meat, anywhere I've worked, sous vide, everyone comes up and says, that's the best steak I've ever had in my life. Like, how did you get it so tender and delicious? Well, number one, you're cooking it with that marinade still around it the whole time. And that slow and low temperature for hours and hours breaks down all the connective tissue and stuff that would make a cut of meat tough. Yeah. And at the same time, it never goes over that temp. So I tell people, so if you put a bunch of steaks or burgers on a grill and the flames are coming up the bottom, those flames are coming up because all the juices and the fats and everything else are dripping out of the steak into there. I said, when you do that sous vide controlled temperature, not 1 ounce of fat or juices or anything are coming out of that steak. They're all staying in there. Yeah. They're not hitting that 750 degree char grill, and just drying it out.
Right.
They're all just slowly coming up to that medium rare temperature and staying there for hours, which makes it more tender, soaks in the flavors, and it doesn't lose any juices or fats or anything. So it's super moist.
Is that technique used for cooking large volumes, or is it? Wouldn't matter. You can do it 3,
at home.
4, yeah.
I've talked to people that are just super foodies and they don't want to be a chef, but they love cooking at home, and they'll see me doing it like in restaurants or in catering, and they're like, and I'll be like, can I do that at home? I said, absolutely. I said, you can get on Amazon and find a sous vide, circulator.
Yeah.
And the circulator means that the water's moving all the time, so it all is even in that entire vat. Now we put it like 50 steaks in a big pot with a big circulator, but you can buy small ones. It'll just go in a small pot at your house.
Oh, wow.
And it circulates the meat, and you can buy a cryovac thing and cryovac your fish, your chicken, your steak, and put it in there, and it circulates it. And so I demoed just 2 weeks ago to some of my students. I took 2 New York strips and marinated them and sous vide them, cryovac'd them and put them in the sous vide, and then a couple hours later I took 2 of the identical steaks. I had 4 of them, and I took 2 and just seasoned them real nice and threw them on the char grill and cooked them to like a perfect medium rare. And then I pulled them out, and so I cut them all down into strips, bite size, nice bite size, with the sous vide ones I cut out of the package, and then the 2 just on the char grill, and I had them all taste them. They couldn't believe the difference.
Wow.
They're like, oh my God, this is like, it's like an incredible difference. Like, I said, that one is just like melts in your mouth and so much flavor and so juicy, and that one's like a normal steak, which we would have never realized is so dry and,
Yeah. Oh, that's incredible. Yeah, that's obviously, I just learned something.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't know that, I've had those fillets before.
Yeah.
And that you've made at
Maple
at the barn.
at the Maple
Farm.
Barn. Yeah.
And they're delicious.
Oh,
but I wouldn't have known that's the way you did them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I'm like, oh, geez, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah, we had one guy that was getting married there, and he 2 years ago, and he was very picky, and he was from D.C. His family, the father of the bride, and he even come up to me, after the wedding, he comes up and he says, "I'll be honest," he said, "I don't know how the hell they were going to get any kind of good chef way out in the middle of nowhere here, like." He said, "This is such a."
Yeah.
Like this is literally in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And I was like,
yeah.
And he said, I was even Googling you, and I was like, wow, you have quite a background. He said, I don't know what the hell are you doing here cooking? And I said, well, from here, I love it here. I wanted to move here.
That says something. It says something about the area, really, that you could have been anywhere.
Yeah. And he had like 300 guests or something, and he said, I was so nervous. And he said, I want to tell you, if I didn't have 100 people come up to me at this wedding and say that's the best food they've ever had in their life, and he said, my wife and I eat in France all the time. We fly all over the world to eat, and he said, that's the best filet mignon I've ever had in my life. Yeah. He said, those are the best hors d'oeuvres I've ever had. He said, you guys are amazing. I'm like, okay, thanks. It's like they just doubt it because we're in Somerset County,
Yeah, they don't doubt us.
Yeah, we can do it here.
Yeah, well, it's a work ethic. I think there's a huge. Southwest PA is kind of like that. You got a lot of football players.
It's very blue collar, hardworking people.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Understand work ethic and.
Yeah,
that's what we need to pass that on to our next generations.
Right.
For sure. And there's ones that have it and will pick it up and take it and carry that torch.
Yeah.
And there's always going to be the ones that are slower to get there. And,
yeah.
That's awesome. Congratulations on that. So, what's something that you just really like to cook? If you had to cook for your wife, kids, family, had a little get together at your house, what would you make?
My favorite to eat is pastas. I mean, I love pasta.
Yeah.
So I don't know why, but I just love pastas, and I do all kind of crazy creative pastas and things like that. I make homemade pastas, and I even have like on my YouTube channel, like.
Yeah, I saw your YouTube channel.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
It started to make. So I was doing I give students practicals where they have to cook something, and I'm sitting there judging them, and it's part of their grade. And some of them are high-end techniques. Some are really easy. Like flipping eggs, and it just from this bare ground to very high technical skills as they progress in culinary school. But when you get to the harder things, especially, I'm going to grade them on. They might have done it a few times with me, and then when I'm grading them, they just get so nervous and they forget how to do it. So I started making a YouTube channel so I could do some of these things so they could watch it before, And they told me they would watch me making
super helpful.
Watching me making a galantine. The one kid said, I watched that 14 times last night before today, so I could get. That really helped, But then COVID hit, and I went kind of rogue and was doing hunting videos and cooking the meat.
Hey, that's all right.
Parties at Jeff Laddish's speakeasy.
Yeah, I think that's the one I watched. But I can remember when Jeff got his first cooker.
Yeah.
And we used to go back to Barty Lake there by his house, and they would make chicken all the time. It was like the best chicken. I'm like, how in the world, are they making this chicken? Slow over an open pit of charcoal. In the season, they spray it constantly or with whatever's in there.
Yeah.
But I've since done it, my own and tried it, and it turns out good. I just slower the better. Those thighs get real tender. And, turn them a lot. And, that's a lot of work. Then you got that cooker and started making those shaved steak sandwiches, the Chuck Wagon.
Oh yeah, they make great food at Chuck Wagon.
That's the only thing I want to eat when I go.
Yeah.
We can't go there for lunch, but that was my favorite thing when I went there for lunch. It's the only thing I ordered.
Yeah, we still sell a ton of those there.
Yeah.
Especially today's Friday.
We'll takeout.
They'll be busy as hell today. Yeah. Fridays are tough.
I think I remember the first time they set up at Summerfest.
Yeah.
When he started into it, and a Chuck Wagon sandwich.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, they still sell tons of Chuck Wagon sandwiches and
they're
things like
delicious.
that. But
so he found you and you started cooking.
It was probably, I don't know, I'll bet you 12, 15 years ago. I don't know how long. I don't know when I started with him, but I remember it was like we were having a conversation about something, and I didn't even know him that well. And I said, well, if you ever need help cooking, I said, because now my kids are all grown up and out of the house, and, it was like, before I quit and left the Pine Grill many years earlier because I just wanted to spend the rest of the time with all my other kids, because we have a lot of kids, and it was like, and so I didn't want to miss everything on the rest, and then now all of a sudden, flash forward 15, 20 years, and they're all grown up and they're all out of the house and living all over the country, and I'm like, said to Jeff, I'm like, I just teach at the culinary school. I said, if I'm ever, not, if I'm not working there, I said, if you need any help, cooking's all I've ever done, I can help. And I think he was like, well, what are you doing tomorrow? I was like, and ever since then, it's been cool. When I'm not at the culinary school, I'm with Jeff Ladich helping him, working for him.
Yeah, they do a lot of business.
Oh yeah, my God, just the weddings over the summer, and I mean, but weddings, we say we do a lot of weddings, and he's the sole caterer to the Hayloft, the Heritage, and the Maple Barn, like all 3 wedding venues. Yeah. So from May to October, there can be anywhere from there's going to be at least one wedding, and there could be up to, I think we did 7 weddings one weekend, already, and on top of that, like tomorrow it's like a cash bash or a jewelry bash for $350 and a funeral, and it's just constant all week long. He's catering
I just can't
all
imagine
over the place.
Prep work.
No, it's a lot. That's some people, like even students and other chefs I work with, are like, how do you do 4 weddings on one Saturday? Like, you must have 100 people cooking for you. I'm like, no, there's about 6. I said, it's like you work a lot. You just long hours and just try and move fast.
Yeah, like you said, the multitasking and the preparation that goes into it's incredible.
You got to really be organized.
Yeah,
that's the key.
To be organized.
Yep, and I love it though. I mean, I really enjoy catering.
Yeah,
if I've tried so many different things, and that's one of my favorites.
Yeah. And so when I've been to a lot of the weddings because I was a vendor, a lot with the donkeys and but so sometimes the chef comes and it depends on what they order, and they'll grill the steaks, do the salmon or whatever on the grill there, and stuff. But otherwise you're behind the scenes cooking.
Yeah, and like I said, it's all. You got to do some things to entertain yourself in between. That's how I got into that Chef Educator of the Year competition and Chef of the Year. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that. How did that come up?
Well, that was, I was, at a, there was some other chefs that asked me and said, would you fill out this paperwork for, the Chef of the Year competition or whatever. And
so this was between educating chefs?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And then I filled out the paperwork, and sent it in, and then I had to compete for the Northeast U.S., and then they picked me as the winner for that. And so then I was representing the Northeast U.S., and I had to go to Vegas, which was the international ACF, American Culinary Federation convention, and there were over 1,400 chefs from all over the world there, and I had to compete against the winner of the Southeast, the Northwest, and the Southwest.
Wow! And
we were all on a massive stage. And
how do they even judge something like that? 'Cause I'm sure everything's incredible.
They had these judges that were hired to judge us from all over. And they were
judging something like that would be somewhat subjective, right? I mean, everything's
some subjectivity comes into it. That's where it's like you just got to say, "Hey, I'm just going to do the best I can."
Yeah, right.
And
what might be good?
You had
one judge is, another judge is going to judge differently.
Yeah, and there's certain things that you can tell are right or wrong. Like there's certain criteria. Like you had a certain time limit, but you had a 10-minute window to come plate all your food, and if you were 1 minute late, you were disqualified. So it was tedious that way. I mean, you had to have all your plates done, and there was big screens all through the hall, where you could watch it. And my wife Corey, she was running the PowerPoint that I had to follow along with it and talk on a mic and explain everything that I'm cooking as I'm cooking, which makes it harder.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to explain everything as I'm doing it and watch the timeline and not mess anything up. But I practiced it a lot.
Okay.
And
what'd you make?
I made everything on my plates I decided to go with farm to table. So every single thing on all my plates was from Somerset County. So I had Maple Barnes maple syrup. I had Glades Pike wine in there. I had the Amish cheeses that I was using. I had, what else did I have? Honey from a local bee producer, a guy I know
That's awesome.
has bees, and, local produce that was on there. And it's like I cooked all this stuff and I made these but they were also vegetarian. I was going to get some deer that I killed and put some grilled venison with a blackberry gastrique on there or something, which would have been really nice. But I didn't want to transport venison all the way to Vegas and it was so much more of a hassle. And I figured if I can just go with all vegetarian, this is going to be more successful.
Yeah.
And plus I was using some guys that I always work with the U.S. Culinary Olympic team. And, and they go to Germany every other year and I work with them. They always wanted me to get on the team, but I'm like, I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
I got too many other
we
things.
Had a culinary Olympics.
Yeah, they go. Yeah, that's a big thing. But I always work with them, and they helped me critique some of the stuff. And they were also out in Vegas, because it's such a big convention, and they're some of the top chefs in the country. And a lot of the Food Network guys are there that you get to talk to. And but anyway, when I was cooking, then I did the competition. I had videos within the PowerPoint that my wife Corey put together, and there's a video of me when I was out turkey hunting, and I found a bunch of ramps and morels, and I'm digging them out and getting someone to video me, and I'm talking about the ramps and the woods, and I said it's in the spring, right now is when you can find them, and this is what they look like, and I'm going to use them in my dish, and these wild mushrooms, morels, and I'm going to put them in there and explain what they are. And
that ramps, that's like a lost time tradition,
Yeah. And it went great with the dish, and I explained those, and when it was all said and done, I ended up with a silver medal. I got second place. I was 2.5 points behind the winner in the gold medal, and the judges even told me, they said that they took 6 points off because I talked about 2 different subjects instead of one. And I'm like, what do you mean? They said, well, you explained that it's all vegetarian, and you went on about that, and you talked about the fact that it's farm to table. If you'd have just stuck with the farm to table, we loved that. And it would just they said, that video, you picking the ramps and all the cool stuff you had videos on a PowerPoint, and all the, the local winery and the Amish and the maple place. And they said, that was so entertaining. And they said, but then you talked about it being vegetarian, so we took 6 points off. And they were telling me this after the awards thing, and I was standing there with some of the Olympic guys too, and I'm like, oh, that's fine. I'm happy with silver. I just didn't want to embarrass myself. Yeah. And they said, you'd have been hands down winner if you hadn't done that, gold medal.
Oh, I'd rather be critiqued for the way I talk versus the way I cooked it for myself.
Yeah. So they loved everything, but they, and they said, and then when they walked away, then this Olympic, the guys on the Olympic team, they said, we compete all over the world. They said they know they messed up. They would never come and talk to you like that and say that what happened. They said, unless they just want, that's their way of saying we shouldn't have taken so many points off, because they said we've already done competitions where someone will say something like that in the preliminary competition, to qualify, and they'll say, well, you shouldn't have talked about the fact that it's, something like that. You shouldn't have talked about this and that. Mm-hmm. And then we'll go to the main competition, and we won't talk about the other thing. We'll just do that. And the judges will say, we took some points off because you have a total vegetarian meal and you never even mentioned it.
Yeah.
And they said, well, there they are taking points off because you mentioned it.
Yeah, right. It's extremely subjective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's your subjectivity.
Yeah. Yeah, my kids show livestock, and that judging livestock is subjective.
Yeah.
One judge really might like, obviously there's certain things they look for, just like when you judge food like that.
Oh yeah.
There's the standard.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get down to the little things,
it's very subjective.
Well, congratulations. That's awesome.
Well, thanks.
And when was that? That was
this past August.
This past August. Wow.
Yeah. That was in August in Vegas.
So how long before students want to start coming to work for you like you did those other chefs? Or is it already happening?
Oh, it has happened. It's constant. Students wanting to work for me. Just yesterday, the one girl was like, "I'm graduating. Please hire me." I'm like, "Well, we'll see." I was like,
And so how can they do that?
And they're good. Like, she's a really good student. I'd love to have her, but I don't know people. I just hate to hire students that I have, especially while I'm still teaching, if they're still a student. Like, it's a tough dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
But, once they're graduated, then I don't have to worry about it. Like, I can hire them. But I just hate to have them drive this far because most of them weren't from Somerset. Some were.
Well, I guess.
I have one that drives from Pittsburgh every Saturday to help us cater. She was a graduate of mine, Shay.
Yeah.
And she graduated, 4 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. And she's been working. She started actually while she was still a student. She did her internship with me and Jeff Flatich.
Yeah.
As helping us cook weddings and the weekends, and she still drives from Pittsburgh, Charleroi every weekend and helps us cook.
Wow. Yeah. So if somebody wanted to work,
and one of my students is working at Tailgates.
Oh.
Ben Romsberg.
Okay.
He's cooking there every day, and he's from Rockwood.
Oh, I was gonna say Romsberg.
Yeah.
Okay. Huh.
And I've had several others, but a lot ask. But if they're not from this area, I hate to get into that because then it's like. That just puts them in a bad spot. If they're driving an hour or so every day to work,
Well, I guess if they want it bad enough, they're going to have to.
It's the ones that pester me and say, I don't care, I'll drive.
Yeah, just like you
did.
Okay,
if you're okay with it, then I'll hire you. So that's why I've used
it pays to be persistent, I guess. Yeah, very good. Whenever is it rewarding for you to watch them cook and succeed and do well? And then, obviously, you're still teaching at that point, right?
Yeah.
I mean... I would think that's where a lot of the instruction comes in that environment where you're working together.
And that's what I tell students. You're going to learn, you're learning the basics here, the core education. You aren't going to refine it or really learn how to cook until you get in the industry and you start working with good chefs. And that's why I tell them, work with good chefs. People are going to push you. People are going to be teaching you, like you're saying. You're still learning constantly on the job. That's when you really learn.
That's when you really learn. And that takes patience for people to understand. You go through the education, but the real education starts whenever you start working in it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Very
good.
And there's still that buffer in the industry between chefs who never went to culinary school, and they're always telling my students, not always, but I mean I have so many times in my life students come in and say, well, my boss, our chef, he's just like bitching at me every day saying, you don't need to waste your time in culinary school. I'll teach you everything you need to know here, and that's a waste of your money. And, I'd say, well, two things, I'll tell the student. Number one, he just wants you to work more hours, and you can't because you're going to school every day. I said, and number two, I'm going to guarantee you if he's saying that, he didn't get a culinary education, because chefs who didn't get a culinary education just seem to be a little bit jaded towards the chefs that do, but that culinary education, it is good. I mean, you learn the science behind the food.
Yeah.
I said, when you don't get that education, all you know is what you're cooking. And you don't learn that wide variety of everything. You don't learn the science behind everything. We teach them everything about baking and pastry, everything about, the culinary side, everything about the business management side.
So are those students in that, what you teach now, are they in a 2-year program, 4-year program? Where I am now at the Art Institute, when I was there, that was a 4-year program, and they got a bachelor's degree. And now where I am at the Westmoreland Community College, it's a 2-year program. Okay.
And so they're getting an associate's degree, or they can come in for 1 year and get a certificate or diploma. But 2 years is an associate's degree. But then those credits will transfer to almost any other college. Like we have articulations with Slippery Rock and Penn State and Pitt and IUP and everywhere that they can go and get their continue, and they'll accept all those credits, and then in another 2 years get their bachelor's in whatever they want.
What type of job can somebody get with an associate's degree? Like they're getting there. What do those students go? I mean,
it's a wide variety of jobs. Number one, like I tell them, people need cooks so bad in this country. I said, I guarantee you, if there's a map of the United States, you could close your eyes and throw a dart, and whatever city you hit, I'll guarantee you can find a job there. So, I mean, you're not going to get hired as, coming right out of culinary school as an executive chef making, $150,000 a year, but you're going to have to work your way up. You start out, you could go anywhere. We have students that go to, like I had a student 2 years ago or 3, and she's like, all I want to do, and there was a guy going at the same time, like, and they're both like the same. They're like, all we wanted to ever do is work at Disney and, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, then we'll get you into Disney. They said, you can do that? And I'm like, you can do it. I don't
right.
Yeah. I said, you just get this degree and start focusing on Disney and start seeing what they're looking for. And right now I said, we'll start sending out flyers. And, the day they graduated, they both got hired at Disney. Like before they even graduated, they were like heading down, and they're both still there working at Disney. And they can go anywhere though. You can go to, you can go to Vegas and work, and I'll guarantee you, I'll get you a job. You can get yourself a job, or New Orleans or DC, anywhere.
Vegas is becoming like well, it always has been probably, but it's a pretty big culinary hotspot.
Oh yeah, very big.
I've never been to. Well, we went. I had never been to Vegas until I turned 40.
Yeah.
My wife took me there for my 40th birthday. And we went to, because there was a PBR championship there, professional bull riding. I said, I'll go for that, because I was not into it otherwise, but we stayed at Caesars, and we went to the PBR rodeo, which was amazing. And then we ate at the top of the, I forget what the tower's called.
Oh.
The Sky Rest,
yes.
Whatever that is. It rotates around.
Yeah.
Had some steak. I probably didn't appreciate what I was eating, but it was really good. I just didn't, And no, we had some.
Was that
good
in the
food.
Paris Hotel?
No, it wasn't in the Paris Hotel. It was north, like in Old Vegas.
Oh, okay, I know where you mean now.
And it's that. It's like the highest restaurant. Or something.
I wouldn't know what it's called.
I can't remember.
If you said it, I'd know.
Yeah,
that's where we stayed, and that's where the convention was, and the competition was in the Paris Hotel.
Okay, we walked through there
in Vegas.
They're all neat.
Those hotels. They're all different. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just neat. A couple days there to walk around and go and experience them. Walk through all the buildings it was good. But we found it was hard to find breakfast. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But there's a place there. I don't know if you ever. It's called Hash House A Go-Go.
Okay.
And one of my cousins told me you got to go to this place for breakfast.
Oh, see, I didn't know about
that. So next time you're there, go there for breakfast.
It's
hard to get in. Like you wait, like it's first come, first serve.
Yeah.
And they have this. I think their famous thing is just like their chicken and waffles, but it's like that. I had like some chorizo sausage breakfast hash. It's like chorizo and potatoes, and it's all done. It comes out in this cast iron skillet. Everything is over the top, like everything else in Vegas.
Yeah.
But it was really neat.
Huh.
Yeah, and then we found some little Mexican place by the Sky Wheel coaster thing.
Yeah,
and they had breakfast. It was like outdoor, so it was just warm. It was nice.
Yeah,
you have a nice beer with breakfast or something.
Interesting. Yeah,
it was neat. But there's tons of places out there.
We want to go back, so I'm sure we're going to go back.
Yeah, try Hash House A Go-Go.
Yeah,
it's a neat experience.
I want to go back when I'm not competing and
just enjoy it a little bit.
Yeah.
How long did you have to be there?
We were there for a week.
Okay.
And the convention went all week.
Yeah.
But the competition was like the second or third day we were there. So the first 3 days was all just nervous and getting ready and trying to make sure I had all my ingredients, and in a hotel room trying to prep and and then the competition happened on day 3, and then they didn't announce the winners until the last day I was there, like the last evening. So it was, it's kind of busy, And then I had all kind of other meetings, because I also got inducted into the American Academy of Chefs while I was there, which was a bigger honor than the competition, actually.
Oh, wow.
That was like kind of like the, I don't know what you'd call it. Like it's a very prestigious organization of chefs in the U.S. and it takes a lot to get in.
Do you ever have?
I never dreamt I would get in, get inducted.
Restaurant owner from Pittsburgh or the one at the Ritz-Carlton, you ever stay in touch? Have they ever been like, oh, there's that kid that knocked on my door 12 times?
I do. I don't stay in touch a lot. Some of the chefs from the Ritz I still stay in touch with. This one, Mattioli is a good friend, and Xavier, and I'll talk to them and see how things are going. But the Michael and Candy own La Ferret, and I didn't stay in touch, but then I run into him every now and then. Especially, I ran into Candy not long ago at a big food thing I was cooking at. And she was a guest, and she'd come up and it'd been so long I didn't even recognize her at first, and I'm like, oh my God,
Yeah.
Candy Riccio.
Yeah.
Like,
They're like, oh, Scott, you've done well for yourself.
yeah, she did. That's what she said.
Yeah.
She's like, I can't believe it. And
Yeah.
like, you're that little kid knocking on the door every
That's
day.
funny.
I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. Be persistent.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah,
incredible.
so it's
that's
come
awesome,
full
man.
circle.
Yeah.
I got old.
Yeah, I guess we all do.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else we should cover. I just think it's really cool. Somerset County is full of, unique opportunities.
Yeah.
And, like you said, hard workers. And you came recommended to the show. And I'm like, I think I know that guy.
Yeah.
But I didn't know all this about you.
Yeah.
But that's awesome.
Yeah. So
And probably a lot of people won't, and hopefully they listen and they get to know what a treasure we have in Somerset County. And
oh, thanks.
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah, like I said, it's always say it's just food, just cooking, but
yeah,
it's all
but
I've
it's
ever done.
everybody. Yeah, there's. I don't know. I enjoy good food. My grandmother was Italian, and she always cooked. And she always did the best with what she had to feed a large family, and never cared. Just have everybody over, and I'll throw a bunch of pizzas together. It's just kind of like that mentality where it's just, let's just cook and gather around.
Yeah.
But good food can make or break your experience in places you go. Everybody talks about the food whenever they go somewhere. We were here and the food was good, and
yeah, that's great. And like I said, I'm always I'm very particular when it comes to the cooking. I'm very, and I've always loved cooking and helping. Like now just teaching students, so it's helping, coach a local, Pittsburgh area, Westmoreland team of high school students that won the state's cooking competition, and now they got to go to nationals. So, I ran out to their school with, Chef Racing, who's the pastry chef, and helped them for a whole day. And then they come to our school and we help them there. And, worked as the president of the ACF for a while, American Culinary Federation, local, Pittsburgh, Ligonier area, and just always trying to stay involved in cooking, and, did a seminar cooking. I'm going cooking demos constantly, like for groups.
Yeah.
And just did one for it was like 96 high school students in Pittsburgh at the convention center there a couple weeks ago, and cooked all morning for them and did demos and got them involved. And we host high school kids like almost once or twice a week at the college.
Oh, that's awesome.
I used to go to all the high schools, the CTCs, like the Votex culinaries, and demo for those kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started just asking them to come to the school so they can see it and we can show them around, and then we can demo for them. So it's like every week I'm constantly demoing for those, so.
Yeah.
And constantly doing banquets and things, so it keeps us busy.
I guarantee it. Would you recommend, like, if somebody knew they wanted to go to get a culinary degree or restaurant management or something like that, like some of the Votex offer a culinary program?
Yeah.
Cooking, is that something that you would recommend kids do if they know that's the path they want to go down?
Oh, I would definitely recommend it.
Yeah.
And I always recommend, like, my cousin from D.C. area, and he called me a couple years ago, and he's like, my daughter's, she's thinking of being a chef. She's like 24 now, and she's working, doing something else, sales or whatever, and she thinks she always liked you and wants to be a chef. Mm-hmm. And I said, should she go back to culinary school? I said, well, Dan, first, I would tell her, keep doing her job and get a job in a restaurant on the side and work cooking there for at least 6 months and see, do I really want to do this?
Yeah.
And I didn't see him for like a year or so. And I said, what did she ever like? And he said, well, I told her, you're doing what he said. And so we got her in a really nice restaurant, got her a job cooking. And she said, hell no, I don't want to do that for a career. That is way harder than I thought. Yeah. She said it is miserable.
That'll weed out the ones
long hours cooking in a hot kitchen, and just she's there. It's not the glory you see on TV. I'm like, no, it's not.
Yeah. But you make a lot of people smile whenever they enjoy it. So
yeah.
where did Is it hard not to critique everything you eat whenever you go out, or when other people cook for you, or do you just enjoy food like everybody else?
I just enjoy food, and in my mind, I might critique things, and I can see if something's not right or this or that, but I've never complained about the food, and most chefs are the same way, because we know what hell you go through in the kitchen, and things are, I'm more, I just don't complain. Like they'd have to really do something wrong for me to be like, I can't eat this, or whatever, but so which never happens. I'm always like, oh, it's great. Tell them, plus you never know if they know you. Yeah. And then, they know you're a chef, and they're just like, and you say all this, I hated it, and you overcooked it, and you're too dry, then they'll be like, I'm not like that.
I worked in the golf course industry for like 10 years. So I went to school for golf course management.
I thought so.
Anyway, so like it was used to, and I don't know if it's still this way, but like at that time it was kind of a common courtesy. If you were a superintendent, you were going to go play another course, you'd give the superintendent a heads up, like, hey, just let you know we're coming to play or whatever, and maybe they could put their best foot forward. I don't know. You know what I mean? It was kind of like that unwritten rule where you just said, hey, but then like whenever you're just playing anywhere, even at that time, if you're working in that industry, you're always working. Mm-hmm. Even if you played your own course, you're always working because you're looking at things and, we could do that. Thing. I like what they're doing, or, you get ideas from other places. And
yeah, I do that when we go out. I teach so many things, and students are always like, or people that work for me, like, how did you learn how to do that? Like I said, saw another chef doing it, and I said, show me how you did that. And like, as I growing up, like my whole life, I didn't invent anything. I stuck to it, and I made sure I learned it, and it's been pretty good career.
Well, congratulations, that's awesome.
Thanks.
Give you your gift for coming on the show. Your podcast hat.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, so there's a few of those running around the county now. So
I like it.
So if you see somebody with that hat on, they were on the show.
I like it.
Yeah, I see some once in a while.
That'll be great.
Yeah. So if you were to open your own restaurant again, what kind of food do you think you'd serve or cook, or what would be the?
I'd probably, if I was going to open another restaurant, I'd keep it smaller and make it what I think Somerset needs is like a really trendy food, not hot fine dining, just really, good cooking
that appeals to everybody.
Yeah, but just some like Somerset doesn't have anywhere that serves like, I just call it recent trendy kind of food. Mm-hmm. Like, when you go to Pittsburgh or Chicago or somewhere, and there's like, oh my God, that menu is so cool. There's so many different things, and here it's all the same, chicken fingers and fries and burgers and pizzas and wings and it's a salad or Caesar salad or there's no I don't know, interesting variety, like things. So
you think there's
things that I could? I think there's I think it would be a huge success.
Yeah,
I'm too old to do it, but but
I could. A lot of energy.
If someone wants to do it, I could help them open it and make it good. But because I think it could be, and it's easy to do because I love creating recipes. So like my menu items would be things that just come up off the top of my head. Like
that would be fun.
Not your typical, and I like typical food. I could go into, like, I love tailgates. I can go in there and eat something different every day, and it's like, and it's really good, and I like it. Mm-hmm. But if I went to a trendy restaurant, like if there was trendy things on a menu at a restaurant around here, those what I would be ordering. Mm-hmm. Something just a little different.
Something a little different.
Yeah, like instead of your sandwich being, the same thing on the same burger bun and whatever, maybe I'd have it on brioche, and instead of iceberg lettuce on it, I'd have watercress or, arugula, and
that's a new experience.
Just all different crazy items on the sandwich that taste good. Yeah, because I know what tastes good, and just make them really cool.
It's funny how some people just really understand food.
Yeah.
It's like an understanding of,
Yeah.
there's people that understand computers. I'm not one of them.
Yeah.
And there's people that understand food in almost the same way.
Absolutely.
They know their way around it, and thank goodness for those people, because we all enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Scott Schmucker, I really appreciate you coming and sharing.
Yeah, thank you.
It's been a pleasure. So great job. Congratulations on a successful career. And if you're interested in becoming a chef, you have a great resource right here in our area. Where can people reach you? How can they? Is there anywhere they can find you? I
have a YouTube channel for cooking, but I don't think you can reach me on there. But you can,
What's your YouTube channel?
It's Chef Scott Schmucker.
Okay. And
then, you can email me, call me, find me at call the Chuck Wagon.
Yeah.
If I'm not at the culinary school, or call Westmoreland Community College and culinary department, or I just ask for me and they'll call my number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll put some of those links in the description on the page. So
that sounds great.
All righty, sir. Thank you so much. I'll let you back. I know you got to go cook.
Yep, I got to go cook.
All right, Scott. Thank you. Appreciate it.
It's a lot of fun.